1965, and for almost an entire year, he received very little response, living as a guest in the home of Dr. Mishra in uptown Manhattan. Eventually, a student found him a rented storefront on the Lower East Side, and when he moved there, his first serious students started regularly attending his kirtans and lectures. In September of 1966, on the day of Janmashtami, Srila Prabhupada initiated his first American disciples, and soon after, working with a lawyer, he officially incorporated the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, as a tax-exempt religious corporation. The Swami was very accessible to his disciples. From the first day of his arrival in the U.S., Srila Prabhupada continued wearing his saffron sannyas dress and his rubber pointy shoes. He lectured in this very storefront on the evenings of Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, he stayed in his apartment, sitting at a low desk and conversing informally, answering questions from the devotees crowded into the room. Srila Prabhupada loved the 1966 period. Even at the end of his life in 1977 in Vrindavan, he reminisced about the times at 26 Second Avenue, and he recalled those were
Happy days.
Happy days. We were like a close family. All the devotees of ISKCON have a feeling of heartfelt gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for coming to 26 Second Avenue and starting the Krishna Consciousness movement. Devotees should make it a point of visiting the first ISKCON temple and take part in the weekly programs that are going on now. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. His Holiness Satsru Maharaj ki Jai. So now we have a very wonderful and special guest with us this evening. If I'm not mistaken, he's been traveling all day, driving from DC area all the way here to be with us this evening, and he'll be in the area for the whole weekend. So we have with us His Grace Anuttama Prabhu, who for many of you, he needs no introduction. Very serious senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, joining in the 70s, and he holds many positions and has held many positions for many years. One of his first ones was in Denver, where he was temple president for a number of years, and also started the, which I didn't realize, the Food for Life program there in Denver and Colorado, where they used to distribute 10,000 plates of prasadam per month, which is quite substantial. And he went on after that to become a governing body commissioner, and he is our GBC, or governing body commissioner, for New York, for DC, for New Vrindavan, for so many different areas, and the list I think is increasing day by day. Spiritual. Keeps growing. And he's also the head of ISKCON Communications, the global minister for communications, and we also have our North American minister for communications here as well, Lena Gopal Group. So they're a great team of devotees who are helping to make sure that the message of Krishna consciousness is communicated in a relatable and understandable way by the masses. So this is very wonderful. And so many other things that we could say about Anuttama Prabhu. We're very happy that you're here with us. Sometimes I was with Kripamoy Prabhu once, and he shared with me that now he's known more by his daughter, that everyone says they know. So Anuttama is also known by his son, Gauravani, who is the famous Kirtanir. So everyone's like, oh yeah, oh that's Gauravani.
If the crowd is young enough, it's the granddaughters.
Yeah.
She's a famous one.
So like that. So anyway, we're very happy to have you with us here. Anuttama, thank you so much for coming and being with us this evening. So a big round of applause for
Namaste Saraswati Devi. Nirvisesha Srinivali Pastacharya Zacharane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare So for me, this is an especially auspicious day. First, to be here at 26 2nd Avenue with the devotees and a chance to talk about Prabhupada. And in a more tangible way, to have my drive from Washington, D.C. to New York actually came within 5 minutes of the original GPS estimate. That's pretty phenomenal. To have found a parking spot just around the corner. That's pretty phenomenal. To have parked in a no parking zone with the flashing lights while I went upstairs to leave my stuff and no tickets. So like everything's going good, and I'm kind of thinking like, so this class is definitely going to even things out. I'll probably say everything wrong. So pray that doesn't happen. But also I was thinking if anybody, in this day of social media, people like to take pictures and post them and, say things about people they don't like. So if anybody really wants to like get back at me for whatever, take espresso coffee. You're my witnesses, okay? It's water in case it comes back later on and haunts me. Yes. So I just, I know every week this program has been going on for quite some time, particularly looking at the opportunity to talk about the importance of this particular location and the contributions of Srila Prabhupada, which is really special. There's a lot of, this movement, we'll talk about that Prabhupada started here in 1966, was incorporated right in this room. He asked people at the end of one of his talks who'd like to sign. I think it was Goldstein. There was one man who was coming was an attorney, and he stood up and said, okay, we're incorporating, and we need some signatures. And Prabhupada said, okay, you can sign. And that was the beginning of what today is an international movement. And there's a lot of people around the world. I go a lot of places and ask people, have you ever been here? And a lot of people haven't. And it's definitely on their list of things they want to somehow or other do, whether they live in Russia or China or Kazakhstan or whatever. They want to come to this place. So, I was thinking, coming here on Wednesday night, it's kind of, in a sense, like having a different, is the word, you're from New York, you all know, is it docent? The museum person that takes you around? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, docent.
Docent. Okay, yeah, it's like the different docent comes here every week to kind of talk about what it is you're seeing, what it is you're part of, what it is the history that's really started here. And I just came back from a trip, about 14-day trip. I was in Istanbul, Turkey, and then it was in Italy in an ISKCON community called Prabhupada Desh, and then went a little bit out and around from there and spent one day in Venice and things like that. And it's interesting because I had no idea there were Hare Krishna devotees in Istanbul. And they think of this is where it all started. This was the beginning. This is what kind of enthuses them, empowers them. This is like, the mother lode of everything else. This is where everything else is like a satellite of here. And there's very nice devotees, and they have kirtan just like we just had with Prabhupada leading us. And downstairs and I was thinking, okay, it's in that part of the world where some governments aren't so open to religious freedom, but they've got like Hare Krishna painted all over the windows. And you walk in, and there's people in saris and tilak, and there's books all over the shelves. Right out on the shelves, and it's prasadam. And upstairs they have kirtan and regular programs like we're having here in Istanbul. Because we were going to Italy and found out, okay, we're flying Air Turkey, and if you go there on Air Turkey, they give you 2 free nights at Istanbul. I was like, okay, great. I've never been there. Let's see what's there. And lo and behold, there's Hare Krishna devotees there. And that was kind of special. And then went to the communications conference that we hold every year in Italy this year outside of Venice, and Madam Gopal's been there before. And there were devotees from all over. There's about 80 devotees that do communications work, which is my main thing for ISKCON, including devotees from Iceland and all kinds of other places. So like Iceland, there's Hare Krishna devotees. And yeah, there's Hare Krishna devotees in Iceland, and they're opening a restaurant, and they have programs, and they have kirtans. And I remember 40 years ago when I was in Denver, you mentioned Denver, there was one member of our community who traveled a lot. He was an engineer, and he would travel for his company and go to different places in South America. And he would always stop at the temple and get blessings from the deities before he left. But he would always tell me wherever he went, there was always a Hare Krishna restaurant someplace. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like what sustained him. Like in those days, very kind of, what's the word, exotic places in those days, like Lima, Peru, there was a Hare Krishna restaurant. And when he went someplace else to build a dam, there was a Hare Krishna restaurant. So it all started here. It's all the information, all the inspiration from Srila Prabhupada. So I think that's that's important to kind of think, we're very, very fortunate to be part of that. Because it started here, and it's one of the things, there's so many things to think about in terms of Prabhupada's contributions and his accomplishments. We know this part wasn't read, but the reason he was here, who remembers, why did he come here? What led him to be here? In this place. Yeah. Where was he before? He was on the Bowery, right? And what happened on the Bowery? It was Bowery. I don't know if the Bowery is still troublesome place. Yeah. He didn't have a regular permanent place to stay, so a friend who was moving to San Francisco said, look, I've got an AIR loft, and you can stay there, but you got to share it with this other person who I've arranged to be there. And that other person had a bad acid trip, and like at some point kind of flipped out, and Prabhupada's room was like behind a curtain, and he came and slid the curtain aside, and Prabhupada could immediately tell that he's deranged, and he was dangerous and making all kinds of noises and threatening moves, so Prabhupada kind of had to literally run down the stairs, 70 or 71-year-old man at that point, run down the stairs in New York City, no place to go, no money, no backing, and he wasn't sure what to do. So he called someone named, if I remember, James Green, and then went and he called Mukunda, and when Mukunda, later Swami, who's got a whole story with the Beatles, he found this place. And they met with, I think it's James Green and Prabhupada and Mukunda, and the real estate agent met out on the street just in the blocks there. And he explained that he had this place for rent, and also that there was an apartment up back, and that he'd be willing to rent it to them. And Mukunda, I believe, was talking about how Prabhupada was a very esteemed author, which he was, and spiritual leader, and take it seriously. It wasn't just like a couple, hippie kids trying to rent a space. And and then Prabhupada, it's just, we know, and we read more about him, and you mentioned the biography, the principal biography about Prabhupada, the Lilamrita. One of the things you pick up there is Prabhupada's expertise in everything. So one of the kind of unique things was he's out on the street, and they were presenting this place, and he is literally on the street. He's like living on somebody's sofa at that point in time, and he needed to relocate. I think he stayed with James Green for a few days, and the real estate man said, yeah, he'd be happy to rent it, and Prabhupada said, very good. And I'm going to paraphrase. He said, and we have an international society, and we have memberships, and we would be very pleased if you could be a member for the first month in exchange for the rent, and blah, 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 blah. And the man was so grateful and honored that Prabhupada added him to it. I think, if I remember correctly, that was the first month's rent, or else maybe there was a deduction on the rent, an extra $10 a month or something like that. So Prabhupada was so conscious, and it really gives, we study his life in so many ways, because we get insights what it means to be a devotee of Krishna in every situation. So that's an example how he's, as a devotee, is someone who's understanding that there's very limited resources, it all belongs to Krishna, and here's a person that seems receptive and appreciative of what we're doing, so maybe he'd be willing, and I'm going to ask if he would reduce the rent. And which just reminds me now, I'm thinking of another place, a little bigger, more grandiose than this, which is the Detroit Temple, which was known at that time as the Fisher Mansion. Some of you know the story about that. And this is a beautiful, beautiful home that was built by Lawrence Fisher years ago. I don't know if they still do it, but General Motors cars, you all used to have like a little thing that said "Body by Fisher." They made the body parts, or the automobile body itself, for General Motors cars. So this was the man, his mansion in Detroit, one of many, many mansions in that, when the Motor City was really booming. And somehow it had fallen into, it was just available for sale and probably in disrepair. So they were taking a tour. Some of the devotees suggested that they could buy this property. And as Prabhupada was going around with some of the devotees, he commented that every single room in the house was worth the asking price. I mean, if you haven't been there, you want to see a contrast from this humble but spiritually surcharged place to that not humble but spiritually surcharged place. I mean, there's some carved doors into the music room that themselves are supposed to be, complete treasures, hand-carved, beautiful wooden doors, and tile and all this kind of stuff that you would expect somebody to build in their house in the late or mid-20s. So anyway, so Prabhupada was taking a tour of that building, and then they sat down to negotiate. And again, Prabhupada just said, we have a spiritual movement, it's traveling all around the world, and it's a very, very important thing. And as far as price, I think you should donate it to us. With a straight face, And I don't know, they don't get into details what happened next, but obviously that had softened the man up a little bit for some serious negotiations. And they ended up buying it, and it was a big deal in Detroit because the building itself was purchased by the two of the very famous families in Detroit, one of which was the Ford family, Alfred Ford, or now Alton Barish, who was the great-grandson of Henry Ford, paid for half the building, and then Lekha Shravanti, Lisa Ruther, who was the daughter of the labor leader Walter Reuther, who's not so well known in other parts of the country, but in Detroit, very well known in the whole strikes against the auto companies in the 40s when things were not so favorable towards unions. And so these two families had been like arch enemies for the longest time, at least in terms of their positions. But here, these two young people, young adults, kids of the great founding fathers of those two families, came together and purchased this beautiful temple owned by Lawrence Fisher and turned it into a Hare Krishna temple. So, and again, the example, Prabhupada saying, why don't you just give it to us, and helping with the negotiations. So I think the thing that's significant about, to bring to mind about Prabhupada, there's a lot of books about him now. And I oftentimes think about it as like they talk about a multifaceted jewel. You look at it from a different side and it looks different. So there are like a few biographies and you read, and Prabhupada was like this really tough spiritual master, demanding austerity and pushing his disciples. And you read that other biographies, and Prabhupada was just a total jokester. And every time certain disciples would come to see him, they would have to bring a joke, and Prabhupada would respond with a joke. And Shamasundar's book was a beautiful one, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, 3-volume set. He just talks about all the exciting escapades that they had together. And one that I can remember, they were someplace, forgive me for not remembering the details, but they had to go across there's some bridge. They had some old car, old Cadillac or something like that. For some reason they were driving, I don't remember the details. And they weren't sure if the bridge was going to go. And Prabhupada at that point in time is maybe 75 years old. He's an old gentleman from India, and rather, you would think reserved and I don't want to say debonair, that's probably not a word, but either way, a real gentleman. And Shamasundar wasn't sure what to do about the bridge, so Prabhupada told me, he said, back up the car and floor it. It's in his biography. And they raced across the bridge and kind of like flew across the bridge, and everything was fine. So there's all these amazing stories and histories about the Srila Prabhupada and what an amazing personality is. And when we think about it, it would take someone like that to cross the ocean at 70 years old on a freight ship. As we understand, 2 heart attacks on the way across the boat. Got here, had a place to stay for 30 days only, had no institutional support, no real financial backing. When he got off the boat, he had, I think, it was less than $20, $16 or something like that. Why? Because he'd sold a set of his books, yet again, Prabhupada's financial expertise. He sold a set of his 3 volumes of his books to the ship's captain. That was all the money he had. I mean, you can imagine even in these days, okay, take away your phone and all the ability to, tap here and pay for stuff. Take that away. Take away your credit cards. Take away your cash. Take away your bank account. Take away anybody you can call up and ask them, can you please send you money? Put you on a boat for 2 months to a strange culture, strange country at the age of 70, and start a religious movement. In the midst of the 60s, when you're telling people no drugs, no intoxication, no meeting, no gambling. Like, what are you, crazy? I mean, it really is, it's phenomenal. And I think last time we played that little video with an excerpt from Tom Hopkins, who was talking about historically from an academic point of view, Prabhupada's contributions, he said as a scholar, the only 2 people he considered that they can compare to historically are Jesus and Muhammad. So that's the scholarly opinion, on top of what we learn about the people that were really with him. So I just wanted to kind of discuss a few of those different sides. I mean, in one sense, you know, you see some of the pictures of Prabhupada, and sometimes devotees or people who come, they only see these pictures of this like stern person, because he had that persona, because he's telling people this world is an illusion. Give up all of your stuff that doesn't really make you happy, all of your addictions, and just kind of following the trends of the day, and get in deeper sense with yourself, and say no to your mind and your senses, and get in touch. There's heavy topics. So he had that kind of stern side to him. But on the other sides, the many sides, he was like really adventurous, and forgive me, this is too old a word, I don't know if it's used even anymore, I should ask my granddaughters, but he was like really cool. He was really cool, you know?
It's so cool.
He really was. Do they? Okay, good. But you're too old to know whether they still use that word. I'm going to ask my granddaughters. Okay. I mean, like in other like little stories, because definitely my most read book is Lilamrita. You know, I've read Bhagavad Gita a lot, but probably Lilamrita more cover to cover. And I remember, you know, little vignettes like here, again, might have mentioned this last time I was here. The man that owned this building was Mr. Chuti, Chuti. And he was an elderly man, immigrant, who owned the building. Prabhupada sometimes would use him as an example in classes, how some of these people work hard their whole lives and they put their money into something and it's just more hard work, and how this was an old falling apart building and this and that. But Prabhupada was very friendly to him and very respectful as the owner of the building. And it's described that sometimes Prabhupada would help him take out the trash. Okay? Now, raise your hand if you've been here before. Who's been here ever before? Okay. Keep your hand up if you've ever gone outside and looked to see if there's any in the neighbor's trash that you can help take it out. Anybody done that? He did that. Now, why did he do that? Because he understood the importance of maintaining friendly relationships. He's got a bunch of, like, at that time, just young hippies coming and staying in this elderly man's place, and he's trying to keep good relationships. And they would sometimes do this chanting, and people upstairs would get upset, I guess back here, not in this section, pour hot water through the floor, and, you know, it was a tough situation. He's a great example for us doing communications about the need to, like, understand other people's, we say, needs, interests, and concerns. So he did these amazing things, and then later when he went to San Francisco, which was the second or third, it was San Francisco, it was New York, San Francisco, and then Montreal around the same time. And there, again, same thing, lots of young devotees, and he went on a cookout. They had a bonfire on the side of the ocean. They had kirtan by the Pacific Ocean. And at night, and they watched the sun go down. And they did the kirtan, just like Prabhupada did the Prema Dhwani praise here at the end. At the end, he said, you know, Lord Krishna ki jai, this ki jai, that ki jai, Pacific Ocean ki jai. And then which is like, you know, ki jai, like all glories to the different manifestations of the Lord. And he was reaffirming among these young people, these young friends and followers, that we can see everything in connection to the divinity. We can transform everything we do into a source of spiritual progress and ultimately spiritual pleasure if we see Krishna's being there behind the scenes. And I mean, just so many things. You know, Prabhupada, he went to Russia, what was it, 1970, I think? Around that 70, 72 something. I mean, nobody went to Russia in those days. That was the Iron Curtain. You didn't go to Russia. Why did he go to Russia? He's going to go to preach about God in a country where the official position is atheism, and you can get thrown in jail for doing anything overtly religious. So much so that when he went and met with one professor of Indology, I believe, and they had an interesting meeting, friendly meeting. It's recorded, and Prabhupada was surprised that even this man that was so well versed in understanding Indian philosophy was convinced at the end of life, that's it, there's nothing after this life. So you kind of wonder, like, well, what are you studying this stuff for if there's no validity to it? But either way, after that meeting, Prabhupada said, so I'd like to speak to some of the students. Not possible, Swamiji. Well, perhaps some of the other professors. Not possible, Swamiji. Well, what else can I do? Well, you can take the tour bus by the government, Russian government agent around town, and they'll talk about the glories of Marxist philosophy, and you can only go on this street, not that street. That's how closed it was, and yet he went there thinking maybe there's an opportunity to get a little bit of an inkling in Krishna consciousness, which he did. Of course, now you go today, there's so many Russian devotees. There's thousands of Russian devotees. So many examples of that. Of course, he sent 6 of his disciples, some of whom had started here, to London, where you two were. Anybody else from London here? Okay, yeah, you don't count. No, sorry, you do, of course. But you're a global guy. You go everywhere around the world. I don't think of you as London. So he sent 6 of his 3 young married couples to London to start the Krishna movement. And because they picked up in this mood of Prabhupada being so bold and just so much in the sense of, hey, Krishna is God. He's our best friend. He'll open the doors. I mean, and their experiences are absolutely hilarious. I mean, and similar mood of Prabhupada. The 6 of them went. I think they got as far as Germany, and they didn't have enough money. If you're going to get into London in those days, you had to show you had enough money in your bank account. So they pulled all their money and they put in a bank account, and they went and got into the UK with showing the money they had. Immediately opened a bank account there, wired it back to the other couple in Germany, who took the same money, went back to the UK, got in the country with the same money. Please don't do this. We're not advocating this. But you just see the pioneering spirit that they picked up from Prabhupada. I mean, he really was careful, but absolutely, you could say, for sure, not overly cautious. I mean, he took some big risks, which is particularly interesting because when we study the Krishna philosophy and when we go a little deep into our chanting and our practice and start understanding the validity and the reality of spiritual experience and our spiritual identity, then we realize how fortunate we are to have been given the opportunity to understand there's something else than just the kind of day-to-day stuff that most people in the world are pursuing. And the bhakti process that he brought is so wonderful because technically, I mean, we know, yoga societies are so popular these days. There's probably 10 just on 2nd Avenue. And at the same time, oftentimes, many people, they're not going deeper than what seems to be just on the outside. Yoga is an exercise, and it's a methodology of understanding the difference between the self and the body, and understanding the soul. That's the real deeper purpose of it. And the process of bhakti is there, helping us understand, okay, you're the spirit soul, now what? And that's the real question. Now what do I do? Okay? I can remember when I first was going to Zen Buddhist retreats and visiting the Krishna temple, and I was going to church once in a while and different things, and thinking that, well, if there's a spiritual reality different from the ordinary day-to-day type of life that I had been leading, I can remember consciously thinking, well, then which side of the bed should I get out of every morning? I mean, how do I spiritualize what I'm doing? It shouldn't, what does it mean? What do I do? What do I think? What do I say? What do I feel that's different? And the process that Prabhupada brought, given by Lord Chaitanya and originally Krishna thousands of years ago, was how we can actually spiritualize our everyday lives, how we can, just like this place. I mean, what is this? This is just a crummy little storefront on 2nd Avenue, right? And they're putting high rises. There's still the same funeral parlors down the road. Lilamrita, the book, talks about how in those days you look out the street, there was this funeral home, and I think there was a place that actually sold gravestones right across the street, and some of that stuff is still there. But because it's been spiritualized, it's really, for people all around the world, this is like a sacred tirtha, or a place of pilgrimage, because the consciousness that was evoked from here. So that's the place that we are, and I'll just maybe mention 1 or 2 other things, and then we'll see if there's some questions or comments. Because I'm sometimes amazed. I'm not a scholar, so I haven't done a serious study of all of Prabhupada's books in a serious way. but certain things you hear him say, or you read what he's written, and you just think like, that's like deeper than the pages seem to say. It's like you've opened it up, you brought it up to the modern reality. This is we refer to Prabhupada, many of you know, obviously as our founder, Acharya. Acharya means one who teaches by example. And one of the reasons that he so much deserves that title is his ability to take this ancient wisdom, bring it to New York City, the Lower East Side, attracting, tough audiences. I think, what was the name? Fame of the poet, Allen Ginsberg said, this is like the toughest audience in the world, to try to come in the mid-60s to the Lower East Side and try to talk about, again, spirituality and self-restraint and control. I mean, forget it. Very, very tough audience. But he knew how to make it relevant and to everybody. So here's just a couple of my favorite things. In this verse, the well-known verse, the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a pranamanize of your religion, at that time I descend myself. Prabhupada kind of expands on that. And then he just says this, and I don't know, maybe other commentators have said this previously. If those of you that have studied that can tell me later. Don't tell me now, because it'll take away from my point. But tell me later. But Prabhupada just says, it's not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. That's not in the verse. He doesn't talk about that at all. It's like, where's that coming from? He says, it's not a fact he only appears on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and whenever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. That's not there either, so he's explaining to us what it means when it says he comes again and again and again. It's a living tradition. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. And then he says, sometimes he descends personally, sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant or himself in some disguised form. So again, considering his audience, okay, his son. I mean, I just came from Italy. Duh, who might he be talking about there? It's like, open a building, he's everywhere with his mom, right? His mom, you see his mom more than him, actually. You walk in a lot of churches like, wow, this is like, where's Jesus? Oh, there he is. He's behind Mary. Okay, got it, which is okay. That's different theologies. But, so he's emphasizing in the form of son or servant, okay, just in Istanbul, who do we think maybe Prabhupada was trying to make the connection there? Muhammad, he's worshipped as the servant, the topmost servant of God. So Prabhupada's, again, putting in a contemporary context for us. And one other one that I just found is just phenomenal, just had these two. In the verse where Krishna explains, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them. Take a picture quick. The wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performance lack of knowledge. In the second paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada says, people who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Lord Krishna advises us to not disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But, the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord. They're more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. So it's such a remarkable, remarkable statement that he's explaining that Krishna, who's speaking in Bhagavad Gita, who's trying to deliver Arjuna, who is the source behind everybody being, all the different religious practices that you read in the 4th chapter. Devotees of the Lord, he says, are even more kind than the Lord. Why? Because they know the purpose of the Lord. Which is, to me, when I think about that, such a phenomenal understanding of the nature of personhood in the Vaishnava tradition. That Krishna, God, the absolute divinity, the source of everything, gives us free will. We can stay in the spiritual existence, or we can come here if we choose to. Birth after birth after birth, species after species. avenue after avenue, street after street, wherever we want to go to try to enjoy this material world. But ultimately, Krishna is in the heart of every living being, and he's trying to like get us back because he knows we can't be happy here. But he won't force us. This is our Vaishnava philosophy. He does not force us. He stays hidden, like behind the curtain. He's watching. There's a nice, last time I quoted another Christian song, there's a nice Christian song. The Lord is watching you, the Lord is watching you, the Lord is watching you from a distance. My wife doesn't like that because she says he's not a distance, he's right there. So I said, okay, it's a subtle difference, but I kind of like the mood of the song. You know, he's watching, he's watching, he's watching. He's watching and is described in the Upanishads. He's waiting to see when we turn our attention to him. But he won't bother us. He doesn't force himself on us. But then Prabhupada is saying the devotee, because he understands how much love Krishna has for each and every one of us, he's willing to take risks and approach people even that don't want to hear, because he knows actually that's what you need, and it's actually what Krishna wants, but he won't do it because he's not going to force himself. And in that mood, he came here, to this place, to this storefront, started this movement, and because of the sincerity and the depth of his conviction and purity, and the impact he had on people, it's gone all over the world. And there's people all around the world that would like to be here, so we should remember and think about how fortunate we are to be here and understand this really, really, really is a special place. It's not just a little storefront on 2nd Avenue that has some deed on Wednesday night. It's more than that. So we take some questions now? Is that okay? Thank you. I keep these too. They sometimes don't work for me, so I keep them. Thank you. This is a fisherman's friend. You don't have to be a fisherman, and there's no fish in it. If you put these two up together, this could really get me in trouble. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments or reflections you may like to share? Yes, Prabhu.
I heard from Malati that when they went to London, what they did was, what she told me wasn't about bank account. What she told me was tickets back. Yeah?
Yeah, I think they had to send cash too, at least according to Sharma Sundar's account.
Right. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Show cash in
That's-
hand or something.
Yeah, somehow they had to,
Yeah,
they had to show that they
They
were
did
were
that.
not.
They had a return ticket back.
Yeah.
They flew in and then they mailed the ticket, the return portion of the ticket back to whoever was here.
Yeah.
And then they cashed that in with the travel agent and bought a ticket,
Yeah.
two-way ticket. They did that 3 times
Yeah.
between the two couples.
It's like when you read Mukunda
Something
Maharaj's
like that.
biography, he says this is a history. I'm not saying it's the history, because he knew up front, he doesn't, his memory doesn't necessarily agree exactly, but the essence of it
Yeah,
is definitely there. I mean, and the mood that they accepted, and that they were such risk takers, phenomenal risk takers. So, yes,
Hi, Prabhupada.
what's your name?
My name is Purnima.
Purnima.
Purnima, yes. So Yogeshwara is my Gita teacher, and I'm rereading Swami in a Strange Land.
Okay, great,
So-
wonderful book.
Yes, and what
Which
struck
is a biography of Prabhupada written by Yogeshwara.
Yes.
Joshua Green.
Joshua Green. He said a statement when there was that whole thing about deprogramming, and they were trying to say that ISKCON was a cult, and he said that what was powerful to me, because he was getting ready to retire, right, to rest, that against the Western civilization, I'm trying to paraphrase, the fact that ISKCON stands for no illicit sex, no drugs, no intoxicants, that it went against everything that our Western capitalist culture tries to promote to people and poisons people. And I thought, even more now, with social media, we have to really be so clear to help people, because there's so much poison out there. Smoke shops, more bars than you can count on a block. And I thought, I hope that
Yeah,
the
I was
movement
thinking
can
as I
grow.
walked down the street, I wonder
Yeah.
if I get high, just breathe in the air before I get to the what happens? I mean, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's Kali Yuga, that's the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And, I mean, there's so many billboards. I was driving up and noticing there's lawyer billboards everywhere. I mean, there's so many. and they're all like, you know, three mean-looking guys usually, or sometimes women, saying, you know, we'll fight for you, and you know, it's like all of these, like, you know, and I was saying, like, so this is like the leaders of society today, you know, and obviously they're making money because they're buying billboards, right? And obviously there's a lot of people need and want those services, or else they're, you know, they're not stupid. They're not going to keep advertising it doesn't work. And then you go by the occasional one, like, I thought I'd only seen this in Chicago, and I saw the same thing. It was a sign for hair transplants. And I think the company's name, or maybe their logo, was Eternal Hair. I say, wow, they should talk to some of the lawyers that need a transplant in their pictures, you know. I mean, eternal hair. I mean, come on, give me a break. Eternal hair? That's your goal? You want eternal hair? It's not going to work, first of all. And, you know, why don't you set your goals a little higher? Spend your money on something a little more helpful than that. But yeah.
I saw a sign today. It was very funny. It says, "Thank you for pot smoking." Like instead of "Thank you for not smoking," it was one of the shops that were here.
Oh,
Thank
it was
you
a
for pot
it was a shop.
smoking. It's like a big sign in a shop.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and then like I was going to mention the other sign that caught my attention was because you see a lot of signs for casinos, like a big, you know, happy, young, sexy, rich-looking people having fun at the casino. And then at the bottom it says, if you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLE. But I went by one today that really kind of struck me. It was it's maybe more like a drawing than a photo of someone like holding their head. And the sign says something like, regret that bet. And I was thinking, because before it I always kind of thought in terms of people that they can't stop themselves from gambling and it's tough on their families and this and that. But then this made me really think about the agony that sometimes people go through. You know, like whatever, you put your $100 down, or you put your house down, or and it's gone. Mm-hmm. And there's nobody there that says, "Oh shucks, we're sorry, we didn't mean to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, we'll just give you your house back and take $5,000. Is that okay?" It doesn't work like that. It's pretty heartless. And so that, you know, regret that debt. Right. So that's so much of the world today. People's very filled with regret. And the reason they regret is we understand from a Vaishnava perspective and other spiritual perspectives, because we are misunderstanding who we really are and identifying with the body. The body has senses. The senses are drawn to different things and attracted and repulsed, as it describes in the Bhagavad Gita. So because of the push and pulls of this world, we spend our time, we spend our money, we spend our energy trying to get things or go places, and then you realize that it didn't work. It didn't satisfy me. It didn't fulfill everything that they promised. Like I want a money back guarantee, and therefore leads to regret. And so the Gita is saying, and Prabhupada came to teach us that, well, actually put your time and energy into something that's actually going to make you happy. And you know, I can say now, I just had my 70th birthday. It was kind of like mind blowing. Like 70? That is ridiculously old. And I became a devotee at 20. And I remember thinking, like, in those days, like 30 was old, right? The slogan was, don't trust anybody over 30. If you were 31, you were like over the hill. So and I can just say personal testimony. The time goes by very fast. And be careful how you use it, because, you know, we may be thinking I'm young and strong or beautiful or this or that now. It doesn't last very long. And, yeah. I remember years ago I lived in Denver, got a phone call, some solicitation, it was just strange. And the question they asked was, do you read the obituaries? And at that time the answer was no. And they're like, okay, thank you very much. And they hung up. And I was thinking they're obviously selling something to really old people who are reading the obituaries to see, you know, which of their friends or famous people died in the last couple of weeks.
Coffins.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was like, okay, that's the niche that they're trying to find. So maybe one more question or comment, and we'll chat a little bit, and then we'll have something to eat. Oh, let's see. You already had one. Let's see if anybody else does. If not, we'll come back.
No.
Yes.
We just wanted to know, what is your earliest memory of this place, the first time that you may have come over here?
The earliest memory of,
This place.
oh, this place. I didn't come here till much, much later. Um, I mean, I can maybe better talk about my first memory of interacting with the Krishna devotees. How about the first temple I went to? I have a memory, very vivid memory of that. It was in the winter time, and I was walking back after the kirtan, and the class made so much sense, and the rest of my life was not making sense at that point. And the music and the kirtan and the feast, and everybody's so philosophical and so honest and open about their lives. And I remember like floating home, like just feeling great. And I can still see myself writing the word Krishna in the snow, as I was in Michigan, Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, and I was just like elated. And then I walked home, and I can still see myself opening the door. And there are a couple of friends of mine. One was just like a guy, and a woman who was kind of like my girlfriend at the time, I think. But I can remember seeing the two. Like I opened the door, and the smell of pot wasn't. It was even heavier than the streets of New York, just like blowing out of the room. And they were sitting like, you know, in the room facing the stereo, as we used to say. Maybe they still do, like veggied out or zombied out, just like. And I opened the door. Just felt my consciousness. It just bottomed out, and it was a real shock to me, because I mean I just had felt so elated, and it all kind of made sense. And then I saw that. You know, we talk about a little technical. You know, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion. I went in ignorance. I went from goodness all right to the. I don't remember what else happened that night. I probably didn't tell them about Krishna because they were not in the mood to hear about Krishna. But that's the experience that I had. Yeah. Is that okay? All right. One more? Is okay?
This is a question
Yeah.
about the place. I'm very grateful about being here. That's so special for me. But I have a curiosity. If you don't understand me, I repeat.
No, it's good.
No, about the Radha Krishna picture, painting,
Yeah.
that what is not up. Why?
Oh, okay. How come Radha Krishna's picture's not up?
Yes, like in the
Yeah.
picture.
And they probably should at least put a pillow underneath the one that's sitting back on the floor, but we're not going to mention that.
I couldn't get, because I came here 3 times.
Okay.
And all the time has been there.
Well, they mentioned they're renovating.
Huh?
They're renovating the space.
Okay.
And on June 11th, is that right? There's going to be kind of like a grand reopening. So there's probably a few things that are in the works. It's kind of like.
The Radha Krishna picture is right there. We're getting it framed and then we'll put it up. If you come next week, it'll be up.
Okay, yeah, I'll be happy. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for drawing the local management's attention to the standards that they're meant to be following. That was very good. That's very good. Should we chant a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll share a story while we're setting up. My son, who you mentioned, Gorvani, has a son, my grandson, Kirtan. And Kirtan is a sophomore in his high school, and I guess they have some kind of like culture days or something. So his mother, Gorvani's wife, Vrinda, who's a Bharatanatyam dancer, was supposed to come and dance as a display, but something happened and she couldn't come. So Kirtan and his father gave a demonstration of Kirtan in front of the whole school. It's a boys' school. And Gorvani told us that backstage they were saying this is either going to be a big success or a real failure, but we're in it together, so let's do it. So then they videotaped it, and like Kirtan's playing drum and stuff like that, a little bit, little demonstration, and the whole school's like erupting in like excitement. And then they asked for volunteers to come down on the stage, and they're all like, me. So they brought about 10, 15 kids down, and they showed them the Swami step. So they were all doing the Swami step, and then they started the Kirtan. And it was just really nice because it was seen that, even, I didn't talk about this a lot, but even the culture of Krishna Bhakti is so rich. The philosophy is deep, and the culture is rich, and the history is rich, and the music is rich, and there's so many gifts that we were given. And it was so nice to see like your 15-year-old grandson in front of a student body of, I don't know, 500-600 kids, showing off his Krishna stuff, and them all like being like really enthusiastic and seeing he's there with his dad. We all know how dads can embarrass the heck out of you, right? Right? They even have a term, dad jokes, right? Dad jokes, how terrible they are. So I thought, there it is. It was really nice to see that it was connecting just with the whole student body there. So. So 10 minutes. So we just Krishna Krishna Srimati Bhakti